Okay, next, what we want to do now, let's just take a look over here. So we on the business and directions, right? Here's our business description over here, and then directions are over here, sort of starting in column L. So the directions say that we've been hired to build a cost volume profit model that will help understand the impact of business conditions on his operating income. Okay. In your model, all of the original assumptions will be listed in one area of the spreadsheet. All of other calculations will reference the assumptions, such that if the assumption changes, the effect will ripple through the entire model. And then you need to use formulas in every other cell, right? The only place you type numbers is in this blue box over here. And we know this. That is best practices for using Excel for models. Now, I'm not so worried about the formatting just yet. Let's worry about doing the actual analysis. So, okay. The first thing we did, we completed the assumptions based on the data about Jake's business. We know this. And then we need to do the product analysis, the yellow boxes, assuming Jake only sells either product number 1 or product number 2. And, you know, if you get to 250 units of product 1 or 125 units of product 2, you'll know you're in good shape. So how do we do that? Okay, so I'm going to actually make this a little bit bigger so that you can see what we're doing, like that. All right, so this is just like the stuff we've been doing, sort of single product break even. So the way that you do that is, first thing you calculate is your unit contribution margin, which, as we know, is revenue minus, or I'm sorry, is sales price minus total variable costs. So you calculate that, and notice these cells are grayed out. You calculate that by, it's the price minus the total variable cost. That's 6. And then your contribution margin percent is just the contribution margin divided by price. So what percentage of the price is your contribution margin? 60%. Now, in order to calculate break even in units, that's just a very simple formula. You should kind of have that in your head at this point. If you don't, you could look it up from the lectures, or you could just hang on and let me figure it out for you. So the the break even is going to be, basically it represents how many of those things do you need to sell. Oops, I'm sorry about that. How many of these things do you need to sell in order to cover your costs? So you take your fixed costs and you divide it by, where are my fixed costs? Okay, and actually this is kind of cool because I made a mistake, which is good. All right. Okay, so as I said, sorry, I had to pause the recording there for a minute. So as I said, I made a mistake in my data entry, which is why we love Excel and why I'm going to leave this mistake in there. All right, so I calculated the break-even point as fixed costs, which is C28, divided by contribution margin per unit, which is F5. But that's giving me a number that is not correct. It doesn't make sense. So what's going on here? Well, I know what I did. Can you see what I did? Right? This number is wrong. My sales salary, I made a typo, right? I put in 100 instead of $1,000 for the sales salary. So if I change that to 1,000 as it should be, that gets me to the correct break-even point. So that's the beautiful thing about Excel. If you know you made a mistake, you just go back in and fix it, and it ripples through. And then to calculate the break-even point in sales revenue, you just multiply your break-even quantity times the price That gets you to $2,500. And then the target profit, and again, this is just something that you should remember. It's the fixed cost plus the profit that you want to make divided by the contribution margin. So how many of these things do I need to sell if I am earning $6 in contribution from each one of them in order to be able to make that profit that we want? So the way that we calculate that is you put an equal sign in a parentheses, you add your, I see I made another mistake there, 800 instead of 8,000, but I will fix that in a minute. So those two divided by the contribution margin per, and again, that winds up being wrong, but all I got to do is fix my target profit. It gives me the right answer, and then again I just multiply in order to get to the sales revenue. I multiply the target profit volume times the price, and times F12, and there it is. So it's 15,883 and 33 cents. So that is how you do the break even, single product break even, and then you do the same thing for the other products. So your unit contribution margin again is going to be the sales price minus the variable costs total, and then your contribution margin percentage is going to be that cell, which again my thing is messing me up, so it's F17 divided by the price, and the break even again is going to be the fixed costs, 1,500 divided by the contribution margin. So how many do I need to sell in order to cover my costs? That's 125. We multiply that times the sales revenue to get us to our, times the sales price in order to get us to our break-even profit, our break-even sales level, and then our target profit, just like before, is going to be the fixed costs plus the target profit divided by our unit contribution margin, and we multiply that times the price. Again, that is hiding its thing for us, so we'll go. That, my friends, is how you calculate the break-even if you're just selling one of these products. And I want to note, even though the treat time has a higher value and a higher contribution margin, you still need to sell a heck of a lot more of them, dollar-wise, in order to break even. But you're selling a lot less in terms of units. So it partially is going to depend on how hard it is to sell this stuff. Anyways, we will go on to the next bit in just a sec.